Your dad had a Craftsman ratchet set. Maybe your grandfather did too. Chrome vanadium steel, forged in Colorado Springs at the Western Forge plant, stamped with a lifetime warranty that actually meant something. You could walk into any Sears in America, hand them the broken tool, and walk out with a new one. No receipt, no questions. That ratchet set was supposed to outlive you. It was supposed to be the one thing in your toolbox you never had to think about. Now go buy a Craftsman ratchet set today. Same name on the box, same logo, but the steel is different. The forging is different. The factory that made it closed in 2020 after a 54-year run, and the 164 people who worked there lost their jobs. The warranty? You can technically still get a replacement, but you'll need to mail it in, pay $7 shipping, and wait weeks for a response from a company that didn't even exist when your grandfather bought his set. Independent testing confirms what you already feel in your hands. The Torque Test Channel put old and new Craftsman socket adapters on a hydraulic rig and found the vintage ones broke at 17 foot-pounds higher torque than the current production. That's an 8% strength reduction in a tool that carries the same name, charges the same price, and trades on the same reputation. You're not imagining it. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly who decided your tools should be worse, how much money they made doing it, and why a family-owned pliers company in Wuppertal, Germany, has been making better tools for more than 140 years while the biggest tool company in America can't keep a factory open for 3. Most people know the DeWalt story by now. In 1992, Black & Decker had a problem. Their internal research showed they held roughly 9% of the professional tool market. Makita held an estimated 50%. The tools Black & Decker made for professionals were actually decent, but no contractor wanted to pull out a drill on a job site that shared a brand name with household appliances like the Dust Buster. So they did something brilliant and deeply cynical. They took the exact same professional tools, repainted them yellow, slapped the DeWalt name on the box, a name they'd owned since 1960 from an old radial arm saw company, and launched them as a new brand. 70% of tradesmen recognized the DeWalt name from shop class. The yellow was chosen because it looked like safety equipment on a construction site. They threw sawdust parties at hardware stores so contractors could test them. The Black & Decker logo appeared nowhere on the packaging. By 1998, DeWalt had captured an estimated 45% of the professional market. Same tools, same factories. The only things that changed were the name, the color, and the warranty. If a billion-dollar brand can be manufactured with a coat of paint, what does that tell you about how these corporations think about the tools themselves? Today, 2 corporations control roughly 65% of the entire North American power tool market. Stanley Black & Decker owns DeWalt. Craftsman, Black & Decker, Irwin, Lennox, Bostitch, Porter Cable, and Stanley Fatmax. Tektronic Industries, a Hong Kong-listed corporation trading on the Hang Seng Index, owns Milwaukee, Ryobi, and Rigid. Together, their combined revenues exceeded $27 billion in 2024. $27 billion flowing to just 2 corporate parents, while you believe you're choosing between a dozen independent competitors. But here's what most people covering this story miss entirely. They describe the consolidation and then move on. They never explain why it happened, and more importantly, why it guarantees that your tools will keep getting worse. The answer is debt. Stanley Black & Decker didn't buy all these companies with cash. They bought them with borrowed money. The Stanley and Black & Decker merger in 2010 was a $4.5 billion deal. Irwin and Lennox from Newell Brands cost $1.95 billion in 2016. Craftsman from the collapsing Sears empire was $900 million in 2017. MTD and Cub Cadet and XL Industries were another $1.9 billion in 2021. Each acquisition added billions in debt to a balance sheet that was never designed to carry it. By 2023, Stanley Black & Decker's long-term debt had ballooned to $6.1 billion. Total debt, including short-term obligations, climbed to roughly $7 billion, while cash reserves sat well under $400 million. Credit rating agencies downgraded the company in early 2023, a clear signal that the debt load had become dangerous. Now compare that to Makita. Makita's debt-to-equity ratio is 0.02. They carry $90 million in debt against $1.6 billion in cash. They are essentially debt-free. This is not a minor difference. This is a fundamentally different way of running a company. When you owe $7 billion, you have to service that debt. Interest payments come due every quarter. And the only way to generate the cash to make those payments after you've already spent billions buying brands is to cut costs inside those brands. That's why the steel gets thinner. That's why the metal guard becomes plastic. That's why the factory in Fort Worth closes after 3 years. These aren't random business decisions. They're the inevitable math of leveraged acquisitions. Stanley Black & Decker's stock tells the story. Shares hit an all-time high of $185 in May of 2021, right before the MTD acquisition closed. By late 2022, the stock had fallen to roughly $75, a 60% decline. Billions of dollars in market value destroyed. To survive, the company launched what they called a global cost reduction program, targeting $2 billion in savings. The supply chain transformation alone aims to reduce their manufacturing footprint by 30% and eliminate roughly 50,000 product variations. In plain English, fewer factories, fewer products, and fewer workers. The human cost is documented across at least 7 major plant closures: Fort Worth, Texas; Cheraw, South Carolina; Fort Mill, South Carolina; Mission, Texas; Madison County, Tennessee; Concord, North Carolina; and the most symbolic of all, New Britain, Connecticut. The company's hometown since 1843. Roughly 300 jobs eliminated in February 2026. Total global headcount dropped from 60,000 to roughly 50,500. 7,000 employees cut since late 2023 alone. Meanwhile, CEO Don Allen Jr. received approximately $16 million in total compensation for 2024. His predecessor, Jim Loree, collected between $16 and $19 million annually during the peak acquisition years. In 2010, CEO John Lundgren took home a reported $32.7 million, a 241% increase over the year before, a package so extreme that a majority of the company's own stockholders voted against it. The executives who engineered the debt are compensated in the tens of millions. The workers who built the tools are compensated with layoff notices. If the acquisitions lock you into a company, the battery ecosystem locks you into a shelf. Every major tool brand uses proprietary battery interfaces and digital protocols. DeWalt's 20-volt max batteries don't fit Milwaukee tools. Milwaukee's M18 batteries don't fit Makita. Ryobi's OnePlus batteries don't fit anything except Ryobi. This is not an engineering limitation. This is a business model. A contractor invested in Milwaukee's M18 platform, 15 tools and 8 batteries at retail pricing, has roughly $4,700 to $5,000 in sunk costs. DeWalt's 20-volt max equivalent runs about $4,200 to $4,500. Once you're in, the switching cost is your entire cordless arsenal. And those batteries don't last. Manufacturers claim 1,000 charge cycles, but real-world professional testing shows capacity drops around 40% after 1,000 cycles. At 1 charge per workday, 5 days a week, that's 3.8 years before you need replacements. DeWalt batteries may show noticeable degradation after just 300 to 500 cycles. Tektronix Industries doesn't even hide what this is. In their 2021 annual report, the chairman's letter stated, and I'm quoting directly, "Every additional product we add to the system increases the value of the entire platform to our end customer. This creates a loyal customer base." An institutional investor analysis from Milford Asset Management was more blunt. They described the battery aftermarket as, quote, a recurring, higher-margin revenue stream that creates a network effect more commonly associated with a tech company. The lock-in goes deeper than the physical battery shape. Milwaukee's RedLink Plus system uses a proprietary serial communication protocol running at 2,000 baud, a non-standard rate that appears intentionally obscure. In September 2023, a researcher who goes by tool scientist reverse-engineered the protocol and published the findings on Hackaday. He discovered that third-party batteries that bypass this communication protocol also bypass all safety monitoring. No motor heat protection, no overload protection, no discharge protection. So the system doesn't just lock you in commercially, it creates genuine safety risks if you try to leave. Aftermarket batteries from brands like Waitley and Power Extra sell for 30 to 50% less on Amazon. But tests have exposed them for false capacity ratings. Packs labeled 4 amp hours that contain only 2 amp hours of actual cells. And every major manufacturer explicitly voids your tool warranty if you use one. The proof that cross-brand compatibility is technically possible already exists. The Cordless Alliance system, founded by Metabo in 2018, now includes over 45 manufacturers and 450 compatible tools all running on the same 18-volt platform. But Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita, and Bosch all refuse to join. Only 5% to 20% of lithium-ion batteries are recycled in the United States. The EPA has determined most lithium-ion batteries qualify as hazardous waste. One Pacific Northwest landfill recorded 124 fires between 2017 and 2020 from discarded lithium batteries. The proprietary battery ecosystem doesn't just trap your wallet, it poisons the ground. On December 22, 2025, the Department of Justice filed a civil enforcement action against Stanley Black & Decker in U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland. It was the first civil enforcement action for Section 15 reporting violations filed under the current administration. The charge was straightforward. Stanley Black & Decker knew about dangerous defects in their products and failed to report them as the law requires. The first product was the DeWalt utility bar, roughly 145,000 units manufactured between December 2015 and March 2019. Between 2016 and 2019, the company received numerous reports that the bars were snapping during use and flying back at users, including at least 2,500 consumer returns to a national retailer citing breakage. Stanley Black & Decker didn't file a full safety report with the Consumer Product Safety Commission until May 2019, and only after learning that the retailer had independently notified the CPSC of an injury. The recall, when it finally came in September 2019, documented 56 reports of breakage and 4 injuries, after a roughly 3-year delay. The second product was DeWalt 12-inch sliding compound miter saws, 1.3 million units. Between 2019 and 2022, the company received hundreds of reports that the rear protective guard was breaking during use, causing laceration injuries to users' faces and fingers. The CPSC wasn't notified until mid-2022, another roughly 3-year delay. The August 2022 recall documented 571 reports of guard failure and 9 laceration injuries. Here's the detail that tells you everything. When DeWalt finally sent repair kits to consumers, the replacement guard was metal. Users on Tool Guide confirmed it. One wrote, "The new rear guard that DeWalt sent me is metal, not plastic." Another described it as 1/8 inch thick steel, an impressive upgrade. The previous models, the DW708, 716, 718, all used metal guards. The switch to plastic happened around April 2019, right when the affected date codes begin. Someone made a decision to replace metal with plastic, and it took 3 years before the government was told. This was not a first offense. The DOJ complaint references 5 prior instances of Stanley Black & Decker settling late reporting allegations: 1986, 1991, 1999, 2011, and 2015. Separately, in April 2023, the company recalled 2.2 million fiberglass sledgehammers across the DeWalt, Stanley FatMax, and Craftsman brands after the heads started detaching during use. Those sledgehammers had been on the market for nearly 9 years before anyone acted. In the same 10-year period, Makita, an independent company with no corporate parent, had exactly 3 CPSC recalls totaling 63,000 units. Stanley Black & Decker recalled approximately 60 times more products than Makita. So if the entire North American market is rigged, who's building tools the right way? And more importantly, why? The competing video on this topic names 3 brands worth buying and gives you a quick profile of each one. That's fine, but it misses the real question. What makes those companies different structurally? Why haven't they been bought, gutted, and turned into another brand on the shelf? The answer isn't that they make better tools. The answer is that they're structured in a way that makes it impossible for what happened to Craftsman to happen to them. Germany has roughly 3.4 million small and medium enterprises. They account for over 52% of GDP and employ 19 million people. The economist Hermann Simon calls the most successful of these companies hidden champions. Germany has 16 of them per million population, the highest concentration in the world. They average 71 years old, and 85% remain private. The tool companies among them aren't surviving by accident, they're surviving by design. Hilti, headquartered in Liechtenstein, is 100% owned by the Martin Hilti Family Trust, established in 1980. There are no shares to buy. There is no hostile takeover mechanism. Revenue reached 6.4 billion Swiss francs in 2024 with 34,000 employees. Hilti spends 7.2% of its revenue on research and development. Stanley Black & Decker spends an estimated 2 to 3%. Hilti invests roughly 3.5 times more intensely in engineering while carrying an equity ratio of 61%, meaning the company is funded overwhelmingly by its own profits, not by debt. Their fleet management model, where contractors pay a fixed monthly fee covering tools, unlimited repairs, theft protection, and automatic upgrades, now serves over 131,000 customers with more than 3 million tools under contract. A Harvard Business School case study found it produces customer loyalty 5 times higher than traditional tool sales. Festool is owned by the Stoll family, now in its 3rd generation. 80% of their products are manufactured in Germany. They command 2 to 3 times the price of comparable consumer-grade tools, and professionals describe them as life-changing. Festool's parent company also owns SawStop, but we'll get to that. Knipex, the pliers specialist, has been owned by the Puch family since 1882, 4 generations, more than 1,800 employees in Wuppertal. Nearly 100% vertical integration, everything from drop forging through grinding, laser machining, and dispatch under one roof. They produce 100 types of pliers in 900 variants and export to over 100 countries. And then there's Bosch. Robert Bosch's 1938 will created a structure so ingenious it has protected the company for nearly 90 years. The Robert Bosch Stiftung, a charitable foundation, holds 94% of the company's share capital. But the Robert Bosch Industry Treuhand, an industrial trust, controls 93% of voting rights. The Bosch family retains just 7% of votes and a fraction of a percent of equity. This separation of economic ownership from voting control makes hostile takeover literally impossible. There are no public shares to accumulate. The foundation is a charitable entity that cannot sell for profit. Bosch invested 7.8 billion euros in R&D in 2024, 8.6% of revenue. Makita, publicly traded in Tokyo, has never been acquired either. Japanese corporate governance has historically relied on cross-shareholdings, where companies hold significant stakes in each other, making outside accumulation nearly impossible. The founding family's holding company retains a 12.5% stake, and Makita's capital adequacy ratio of 83.7% means they're so cash-rich that financial vulnerability, the lever that raiders exploit, simply doesn't exist. These aren't cultural quirks. They're legal structures, foundation ownership, family trusts, co-determination laws that put workers on corporate boards. Germany chose to build these protections into its commercial law. America chose not to. In 1999, a patent attorney named Stephen Gass, with a physics doctorate from UC Berkeley, was staring at his table saw when he conceived of a mechanism that could stop a spinning blade the instant it touched human flesh. He designed it in 2 weeks, built a working prototype on a $200 second-hand saw in the 3rd week, and tested it by touching the smooth side of a spinning blade with his bare hand. It stopped. He offered it to every major manufacturer: Ryobi, Delta, Black & Decker, Emerson, Craftsman. The deal he offered Ryobi was no upfront fee, just a 3% royalty on wholesale price. They all said no. At a power tool industry conference in February 2001, after watching Gass demonstrate the technology on a hot dog, Black & Decker's National Coordinating Council warned publicly that any manufacturer who licensed the safety feature would force every other manufacturer to adopt it or face litigation. That was the calculation, not whether it worked, whether it would cost them money. The injury numbers during those years of refusal are staggering. CPSC data shows approximately 67,000 medically treated table saw injuries per year, including roughly 4,000 finger amputations annually. Over the more than 20 years since SawStop's invention, conservatively 1 million people were injured and tens of thousands lost fingers that the technology could have prevented. CPSC Commissioner Richard Trumka Jr. called it the greatest net benefits of any rule in commission history. $2.32 billion saved every year. In his statement to the commission, he said that in the time it took the agency to act on this petition, table saws injured 1 million people, and that tens of thousands would still have their fingers if the agency had acted 20 years sooner. SawStop offered to dedicate its key patent to the public domain if a safety standard was adopted. In August 2025, the CPSC officially withdrew the table saw safety rulemaking entirely. SawStop is now owned by TTS Tool Technik Systems, Festool's parent company, a German family-owned company investing in the safety technology that American corporations refused to adopt for a quarter century. As of 2025, SawStop has documented over 10,000 finger saves on its own saws. There's one more connection that nobody making videos about power tools seems willing to draw. These tools build the houses you live in. Contractors on forums document the consequences every day. One professional on Contractor Talk wrote, "Show me a tool company whose product quality has not gone downhill lately." That would be a very short list. A construction company owner on the Rockslide forum, 42 years in the business, reported burning through a Milwaukee Fuel Sawzall every 6 months under daily use. Another on Garage Journal goes through cordless impact drivers every 8 to 9 months. Miter saw accuracy, arguably the most consequential quality metric in Finnish carpentry, shows how this translates to the buildings themselves. A difference of just 1 degree over a 1-inch span produces a 1/32 inch gap in a finished miter joint. 3 degrees over 5 inches and you're looking at a 3/8 inch gap. Budget saws use plastic detent mechanisms that drift out of calibration, and the DeWalt miter saws that just got recalled for plastic guards breaking were among the most widely used on American job sites. A Goldman Sachs report cited by the National Association of Home Builders in February 2026 found that American construction productivity fell 30% between 1970 and 2024. while overall labor productivity in the economy more than doubled. Their conclusion was that most of the tools and machinery commonly used by the construction industry were already invented in the 1950s, and technological change has been incremental. German homes are built with concrete block and masonry, not wood frame. They use clay tile roofing that lasts over 50 years instead of asphalt shingles that last 15 to 30. They take up to 3 times longer to construct, and the contractors who build them went through 36 months of dual apprenticeship training and hold a Meisterbrief, a master craftsman certification classified at the same level as a bachelor's degree, which is legally required to run a construction business. Those contractors use Hilti and Festool and Bosch, tools made by companies that spend 7 to 9% of revenue on research and development, owned by trusts and foundations that can never be sold. American contractors use tools made by companies that spend 2 to 3% on R&D and 70% of their management energy figuring out how to service $7 billion in acquisition debt. The tools that build your house and the house itself are getting worse for the same reason. Not because the people making them forgot how, because the financial structures that own them were designed to extract value, not create it. The next time someone tells you they don't make them like they used to, you can tell them exactly why. It's not nostalgia. It's not rose-tinted glasses. It's the math of leveraged acquisitions, the logic of proprietary battery ecosystems, and the structural choice to treat toolmakers as financial instruments instead of institutions that build things meant to last. Germany made a different choice. Japan made a different choice. Even Snap-on, an American company with $4.7 billion in revenue and a 22% net profit margin, made a different choice by selling tools off trucks instead of through big box stores and refusing to participate in the consolidation game. The choice was always available. The American power tool industry just chose the other path.